Peace, top of the morning, top of the morning. Um, Wealthy Wednesdays. Get Mind Over Money. I think you can go to mindovermoneybook.com. I don't even care if it costs you because he had thousands of books. I didn't even order my book yet, but I'm ordering like two or three of those books, and I don't mind paying full price because it's going to be worth it. Um, hey, quick question: have y'all noticed how many children have out of nowhere just started coming up missing in Buffalo, New York? I remember the two young men at Waterfront Grammar School or whatever it is. It used to. I think when my siblings went there, it was like a magnet school or something like that. But I don't even know what all of that is. But the important thing is that children are coming up missing all over the city, and ain't nobody doing nothing about it, saying nothing about it. It's just, oh, post for this person. And I'm not talking about the parents. I'm talking about these political and justice organizations. Y'all haven't noticed that these kids is coming up missing? It's just, and ain't nothing cool about it. Like, why ain't nobody doing nothing about that? Why ain't nothing being said about that? Why aren't we out here? Fuck the schools. Shut that shit down, man, and let's find these kids. I don't understand that shit. I seen a brother just post. What's funny is I shared this brother post. I actually just shared 3 or 4 posts that did not go up, so I know Facebook be on their bullshit. You know what I mean? And he was expressing how there was a black student that I don't know exactly what the black student did. I think it was like painted on a statue or knocked the statue down or something like that, and they put his picture up. But this white student that just caused this bomb threat on Friday, they ain't even show his picture. I want y'all to pay attention to the way the media wants to project this image of this negative image of the black man specifically, but also the black woman and child. Right? I'm gonna go ahead and get into my reading because I got to get over here to the school to volunteer today. But man, pay attention, man. Pay attention because they quick to talk about the negative stuff about us, but man, they not quick to make sure that, you know what I mean, they projecting us in the right light. Every now and then, what's one positive thing about black people when 30 of your damn articles or 30 of your damn comments and viewpoints are negatively associated with us, right? So again, I'm reading from The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Today I'm going to honor, what woman can I honor today? I'm gonna just keep it simple. I'm gonna honor Miss Johnson, who is the reason why I've been over here participating at the Charter School of Inquiry around the corner from me. But today I'm gonna get on the lockdown, the rules of the game, and unreasonable suspicion in the new Jim Crow. We may think we know how the criminal justice system works. Television is overloaded with fictional dramas about police, crime, and prosecutors. Shows such as Law and Order. These fictional dramas, like the evening news, tend to focus on individual stories of crime, victimization, and punishment, and the stories are typically told from the point of view of law enforcement. A charismatic police officer, investigator, or prosecutor struggles with his own demons while heroically trying to solve a horrible crime. He or she ultimately achieves a personal moral victory by finding the bad guy and throwing them in jail. That is the made-for-TV version of the criminal justice system. It perpetuates the myth that the primary function of the system is to keep our streets safe and our homes secure by rooting out dangerous criminals and punishing them. These television shows, especially those that romanticize drug law enforcement, are the modern-day equivalent of the old movies portraying happy slaves, the fictional gloss placed on a brutal system of racialized oppression and control. Those who have been swept within their criminal justice system know that the way the system actually works bears little resemblance to what happens on television or in movies. Full-blown trials of guilt or innocence rarely occur. Many people never even meet with an attorney. Witnesses are routinely paid and coerced by the government. Police regularly stop and search people for no reason whatsoever. Penalties for many crimes are so severe that innocent people plead guilty, accepting plea bargains to avoid harsh mandatory sentences. And children, even as young as 14, are sent to adult prisons. Rules of law and procedure, such as guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, or probable cause, or reasonable suspicion, can easily be found in court cases and law school textbooks, but are much harder to find in real life. In this chapter, we shall see how the system of mass incarceration actually works. Our focus is the war on drugs. The reason is simple. Convictions for drug offenses are the single most important cause of the explosion in incarceration rates in the United States. Drug offenses alone account for 2/3 of the rise in the federal inmate population, more than half of the rise in state prisoners between 1985 and 2000. Approximately 500,000 people are in prison or jail for a drug offense today, compared to an estimated 41,100 in 1980, an increase of 1,100%. Drug arrests have tripled since 1980. As a result, more than 31 million people have been arrested for drug offenses since the drug war began. To put the matter in perspective, consider this. There are more people in prison and jails today just for drug offenses than were incarcerated for all reasons in 1980. Nothing has contributed more to the systematic mass incarceration of people of color, specifically black people, in the United States than the war on drugs. Before we begin our tour of the drug war, it was worthwhile to get a couple of myths out of the way. The first is that the war is aimed at riddling the nation of drug kingpins or big-time dealers. Nothing could be further from the truth. The vast majority of those arrested are not charged with serious offenses. In 2005, for example, 4 out of 5 drug arrests were for possession, and only 1 out of 5 was for sales. Moreover, most people in state prison for drug offenses have no history of violence or significant selling activity. The second myth is that the drug war is principally concerned with dangerous drugs. Quite to the contrary, arrests for marijuana possession, a drug less harmful than tobacco or alcohol, accounted for nearly 80% of the growth in drug arrests in the 1990s. Despite the fact that most drug arrests are for nonviolent minor offenses, the war on drugs has ushered in an era of unprecedented punitiveness. The percentage of drug arrests that result in prison sentences rather than dismissal, community service, or probation has quadrupled, resulting in a prison building boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. In 2 short decades between 1980 and 2000, the number of people incarcerated in our nation's prisons and jails soared from roughly 300,000 to more than 2 million. By the end of 2007, more than 7 million Americans, or 1 in every 31 adults, were behind bars, on probation, or on parole. We begin our exploration of the drug war at the point of entry, arrest by the police, and then consider how the system of mass incarceration is structured to reward mass drug arrests and facilitate the conviction and imprisonment of an unprecedented number of Americans, whether guilty or innocent. In subsequent chapters, we will consider how the system specifically targets people of color and then relegates them to a second-class status, analogous, analogous, to Jim Crow. Let me know how to say that word. At this point, we simply take stock of the means by which the war on drugs facilitates the roundup and lockdown of an extraordinary percentage of the U.S. population. Rules of the game. Few legal rules meaningfully constrain the police in the war on drugs. This may sound like an overstatement, but upon examination, it proves accurate. The absence of significant constraints on the exercise of police discretion is a key feature of the drug war's design. It has made the roundup of millions of Americans for nonviolent drug offenses relatively easy. With only a few exceptions, the Supreme Court has seized every opportunity to facilitate the drug war, primarily from eviscerating Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches and seizures by the police. The rollback has been so pronounced that some commentators charge that a virtual drug exception now exists to the Bill of Rights. Shortly before his death, Justice Thurgood Marshall felt compelled to remind his colleagues that there is, in fact, no drug exception written into the text of the Constitution. Most Americans do not know what the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution actually says or what it requires of the police. It states in its entirety, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or thing to be seized. You better take note of that. Courts and scholars agree that the Fourth Amendment governs all searches and seizures by the police, and that the amendment was adopted in response to the English practice of conducting arbitrary searches under general warrants to uncover seditious libels, or libels, L-I-B-E-Ls. I think it's libels. The routine police harassment, arbitrary searches, and widespread police intimidation of those subject to English rule helped to inspire the American Revolution. Not surprisingly then, Preventing arbitrary searches and seizures by the police was deemed by the Founding Fathers an essential element of the U.S. Constitution. Until the war on drugs, courts had been fairly stringent about enforcing the Fourth Amendment requirements. Within a few years after the drug war was declared, however, many legal scholars noted a sharp turn in the Supreme Court's Fourth Amendment jurisprudence. By the close of the Supreme Court's 1990 to 91 term, it had become clear that a major shift in the relationship between the citizens of this country and the police was underway. Justice Stevens noted the trend in the powerful dissent issued in California versus Acevedo, a case upholding the warrantless search of a bag locked in a motorist's trunk. In the years from 1982 to 1991, the court has heard argument in 30 Fourth Amendment cases involving narcotics. In all but one, the government was the petitioner. All save two involved a search or seizure without a warrant or with a defective warrant. And in all except three, the court upheld the constitutionality of the search or seizure. In the meantime, the flow of narcotic cases through the courts has steadily and dramatically increased. No impartial observer could criticize this court for hindering the progress of the war on drugs. On the contrary, decisions like the one the court makes today will support the conclusion that this court has become a loyal foot soldier in the executive's fight against crime. What's up, bro? You always on it, bro. Peace to you, King. The Fourth Amendment is but one example. Virtually all constitutionally protected civil liberties have become undermined by the drug war. The court has been busy in recent years approving mandatory drug testing of employees and students, upholding random searches and sweeps of public schools and students, permitting police to obtain search warrants based on an anonymous informant's tip, expanding the government's wiretapping authority, legitimating the use of paid, unidentified informants by police and prosecutors, approving the use of helicopter surveillance of homes without a warrant, and allowing the forfeiture of cash, homes, and other property based on unproven allegations of illegal drug activity. Isn't it crazy how the government can take cash, homes, property? They even stole more wealth from the common man than anybody else, than any thief, any extortionist, any robber, any stick-up kid. I know people that got shit taken away from them and wasn't found guilty of anything and never got their shit back, never got their home back, never got their money back, can't tap into their bank accounts and shit like that. The brother that just came home from Dallas, who was found innocent for the corny black identity extremist bullshit, they took his money, all of the money that was donated to him and that cause. They have not allowed him access to that money, and I doubt that they ever will. I think, man, something really got to be done. I'm not I definitely could put my head in the law books and I know how to look around, but I'm not no Johnny Cochran. I wish I was. Oh, I wish I was, because I would teach 1,000 people to be the same way. Man, I would teach 1,000 men and women to be the same way. For our purposes here, we limit our focus to the legal rules crafted by the Supreme Court that grant law enforcement a pecuniary interest in the drug war and make it relatively easy for the police to seize people virtually anywhere, on public streets and sidewalks, on buses, airplanes, and trains, or any other public place, and usher them behind bars. These new legal rules have ensured that anyone virtually anywhere for any reason can become a target of the drug law enforcement activity. I just think that's just crazy. There should be a lawsuit against the entire legal system, the entire so-called justice system, because they're in cahoots with one another and they protect one another. There's no separation in that. The judges, the lawyers, even the public defenders, they're not there to defend the public. They there to get a conviction out of the public as soon as possible so they could collect that $500. Wouldn't it be awesome if, hey, you can get them to plead out, we'll give you $500. But hey, if you represent them and get them off, hey, we'll give you $2,000. Wouldn't that be a great incentive to make the public defenders really do their fucking job? Because you damn near got to put one of these niggas in a headlock or knock them the fuck out to see that you're not fucking playing. I know. I've experienced this. Okay. Unreasonable suspicion. This is going to be the last part that I read before I go ahead, man, get ready to go to work, as I call it, even though I'm volunteering. I feel like I'm putting work in that all of us men should be trying to do at some point. Unreasonable suspicion. Once upon a time, it was generally understood that the police could not stop and search someone without a warrant unless there was a probable cause to believe that the individual was engaged in criminal activity. That was a basic Fourth Amendment principle. In Terry v. Ohio, decided in 1968, the same year Martin Luther King was murdered, The Supreme Court, or assassinated, let me say that. The Supreme Court modified that understanding, but only modestly, by ruling that if and when a police officer observes unusual conduct by someone the officer reasonably believes to be dangerous and engaged in criminal activity, the officer was entitled, for the protection of himself and others in the area, to conduct a limited search to discover weapons that might be used against the officer. Known as the stop and frisk rule, the Terry decision stands for the proposition that so long as a police officer has reasonable and articulable suspicion that someone is engaged in a criminal activity and dangerous, it is constitutionally permissible to stop, question, and frisk him or her, even in the absence of probable cause. That's just absurd, because I've seen police just ask you, like, first of all, like they said, if they see you doing something. You know how many times I've seen police stop people or walk up to people and start engaging with them because they just want to harass them. Not because they was doing anything or looked like they was doing anything, just because they were in the area and they decided, you know what, I'm going to single you out because you out here by yourself and I feel like being an asshole today. If I don't really want to do no real work, I really want to do something easy so I can go back here, man, eat my fucking donuts and chill out, or get back into this motherfucking jail and get to abusing some of these motherfuckers I arrested like they do. Justice Douglas dissented in Terry on the grounds that granting police greater power than a magistrate, than a judge, is to take a long step down the totalitarian path. He objected to the notion that police should be free to conduct warrantless searches whenever they suspect someone is a criminal, believing that dispensing with the Fourth Amendment's warrant requirement was opening the door to